Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Het Patel. I'm with the City of Raleigh in the Transportation Department Transit Division. Thank you all for coming here today. This is actually our second industry day on the Wake Bus Rapid Transit program. We did our first one in 2023. We're back here again in 2025. We would have hoped to have been further along in the implementation of our program, but we are here today to try to get more feedback from the contractor community on how to advance our projects forward, as well as update you all on status of the other corridors and the projects that are still moving through design phases throughout the entire program. I'm gonna let Sam introduce himself as well.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Sam Brewer with the Roadway Design and Construction Department under Engineering Services. And we're here, like Het said, to talk about our project, which is delivering a new and exciting option for service. But while it's a new and exciting service, it's really a straightforward construction project. We're going to walk through that with everybody, and hopefully that's what everybody is going to view this as we present the changes we're making to how we're going to put it out there for bidding.
Thanks, Sam. So a couple logistics. We have the Raleigh Television Network recording this event. So just be mindful of when you stand up and are walking around where the cameras are. If you are on the camera, smile, wave hello. Otherwise, the other logistics, the bathrooms are behind me out the hall this way to the right. As well as we are planning for this event to be an interactive feedback opportunity from the contractor community. So if you have a smartphone, I would take that out. I'll get into the instructions of that in just a second, but if you have a smartphone, keep that handy. We will be doing some live polling activities throughout this presentation. While we're informing you guys, again, we're trying to get some feedback on our end to understand how to make these projects more competitive and advancing them forward. So the agenda today, again, is having an overview of the Bus Rapid Transit program, all of the projects that are identified in the program. As Sam mentioned, this is a transit project, but it's also a traditional roadway project. There's a lot of sidewalk, bike ped improvements, as well as utility improvements and your traditional roadway widening type of work that will entail in the efficient travel of buses and dedicated bus lanes. And so that's how we're gonna achieve this through the program. We are gonna provide a history of the Bern Avenue Bus Rapid Transit project, as well as what has happened to date from a construction bid advertisement perspective. We're gonna provide an overview of the project itself and what we're planning to do next for the project and get your feedback on that. And that is that overall interactive feedback opportunity that's tied to this presentation. Once we're done, we do have the room for a longer period of time, so happy to stay around. We do have the back of the room broken up in those areas that are being identified, so if you need more information or if you want to ask questions of the final design team, now would be a good opportunity to go to those tables and try to talk to them about what's happening. So our first part is, again, that instructions of how we're doing the live polling. So hopefully y'all have used Mentimeter before, but if you have not, go to menti.com and then enter the code that you see there, 63612035, or use that QR code, and that should take you there. And again, if anyone is trying to figure this out and needs help, we could have that top part of the screen that also shows the code. That's on every slide. So if you ever accidentally log out and need to come back in, you can do that on the next slide. So I'm gonna leave this on actually just for a second to make sure everyone's gotten a chance to either scan the QR code and get onto the Menti page, or go to menti.com and use the code 63612035 to get into that interactive component. And I see those thumbs up going up, which means we are successfully getting people into Mentimeter. All right, I'm gonna move on to the next slide. So this is our first question. Again, identify your role in the industry. Are you a general contractor? Are you a specialty contractor, construction manager or administrator, someone in engineering services, professional services, working in the consulting side of the world, or other? We're happy to know what you see yourself, your role within the construction industry. And we'll see that populate. And this was just the icebreaker. This is, just us trying to get an understanding of who all is in the room and where we're getting our feedback from. Yep, so we've got a good amount of professional services consulting and the general contractor community. Hopefully y'all have connections to your subcontractors that'll be working on the project as well, and we'll be sharing this information with them. Again, the point of recording this today was we will be making this available on our website, so if you were not able to attend today, there will be an opportunity to view the recording of this event, as well as share with others that may be interested in this project or a component of this project in making it happen. So I'll move on unless, okay. So again, from a program perspective, we have 4 bus rapid transit corridors that were identified in the Wake Transit Plan. New Bern Avenue is the most advanced, which is at the construction phase. The southern corridor and the western corridor are in final design now, and they're at about 30% design each respectively. They're a little bit in each other's 30% design vicinity. Planning study for the northern corridor and the extensions, those are the dashed lines that you see on the project. So the reason for having this slide and this next slide is to help everyone understand that this is not a single project. There are multiple projects of similar scale and style that are following suit as soon as we begin the first project. So again, New Bern Avenue is in that pre-construction phase. We are looking to re-advertise the construction of New Bern Avenue in the spring of 2025. If all goes well from a federal funding perspective for our southern and our western corridors, there's anticipated construction bid timelines for those on that side as well. So southern corridor potentially in 2027, again, if all goes well with our final design phase and our federal grant agreement, as well as the western corridor in potentially 2028, contingent on that federal funding award and allocation. Those planning studies, they will take a little bit longer, but that, again, trying to identify that there's more than 3 corridors. There's a 4th corridor that is being split into 2, and so there's a lot of work related to this type of project that is in the pipeline between now and 2035. So we're gonna kind of walk through the history for New Bern Avenue, the construction advertisement. In March of 2024, we advertised New Bern Avenue for construction. And you'll hear about the project overview in a minute, but we advertised the project as a whole, the entire project, stations included, everything as one package in March of 2024. We did not receive any bids. We got feedback from the contractor community at that time, decided to break up the horizontal roadway work from the vertical station design work and re-advertise just the horizontal roadway work in August of 2024. We received a single bid in October of 2024, which was rejected by council in January of 2025. And that is why we are here today, again, looking for feedback on the next steps of the approach that we have identified, as well as working towards how we move this project forward. Sam, I don't know if you want to add anything else there.
Just the decision that we came to re-advertise it the first time, breaking it up was, after was a result of feedback from contractors in the area, contractors that have performed similar projects around the country, and other authorities that have delivered projects and were successful breaking it up in that way. So that's why we came to that choice to try and do that on the last round, kind of similar loop for getting to this point. Does anybody have any questions about those steps along the way? Yeah, it was significantly above the budget allotted for the overall project, and keep in mind that scope that was bid at that point was not the entire project anymore. So we had to consider, the long-term fiscal impacts for being able to deliver future projects in the pipeline, as well as this one getting on the ground. Sure.
Yeah, and for any other questions, raise your hand. We'll stop the presentation. We want this to be informal. We want to hear from you all. We want to hear feedback that you have. So if you have any more questions as we're presenting slides, feel free to stop us. We do have a mic runner that can bring a mic to you so that we can capture audio as well when questions do come up.
Got a mic for you. It's actually just The slide that showed the upcoming project sequence for that one there for the southern one. It looks like that's a later date than we've seen in the past. Is there a chance that could come back up again, or is it now definitely 2027 as opposed to 2025?
That's the bid advertisement and start of construction in 2027. So we do still have to work through the federal process on the southern corridor. We have an allocation identified by the Federal Transit Administration for the southern corridor. We have to work through, get our 60% designs, risk and readiness review completed before that can be executed as a grant agreement.
Yep.
And so those steps will likely take the remainder of this year and most of 2026. And so that's why 2027 is the target date for southern corridor.
Okay.
All right, so going into the actual project itself, for New Bern Avenue, we have 3.3 miles of dedicated bus lanes on a 5.4 mile corridor. Those dedicated bus lanes have different flavors. In downtown, there is right business access and transit lanes. So those are bus lanes that are along the right side of the roadway. And then in the middle part of the corridor, there is the median running transit way, which is dedicated bus lanes that are physically separated from general purpose traffic. We have 10 new enhanced stations that is totaling 19 platforms that would be constructed as part of this project. They are, again, about half a mile apart throughout downtown to East Raleigh. Most of them are level boarding stations, so again, those make it easier for passengers to get on and off the bus faster. We'll have 7 60-foot articulated buses. We already have those, and then we have transit signal priority at signalized intersections. So now I'm going to kind of go through geographic areas of the work where there are some differences and how we could break up the project to allow for more cohesiveness or work opportunities. So I mentioned the bus rapid transit running way treatments. In the downtown area, we have business access and transit lanes that are along the right side of the roadway. There's not a lot of significant road work happening there other than mill and surfacing or roadway resurfacing, lane restriping. There will be transit or signal upgrades as well as some public utility work that's needed in this part of the project, and then the concrete multi-use path and crosswalks at intersections. Again, I want to highlight since that first advertisement, we have decided to break out the vertical station work. So at this point, any re-advertisement will initially focus on the linear roadway work that's needed to happen, and then the vertical station work will follow at a later date.
And we'll talk about the 3A at a future slide, right?
So Area 2, this is the median running transit way. This is from Pool Road to Wake Med at Sunnybrook Road. This is the area where we have the most amount of road work happening. So there is actual widening into the median to build the dedicated bus lanes. There is the multi-use path on the south side of New Bern Avenue, as well as including the new travel lanes for New Bern Avenue when the widening occurs. And so again, this part of the project has more significant roadway work, widening, resurfacing, median reconstruction, curb and gutter upgrades, also traffic signal upgrades, and then public utility conflicts that are there that need to be moved. Those will also still happen in this area, along with some green stormwater infrastructure, and then again, that multi-use path that I mentioned.
Yeah, and in this areas where we have, complete lane closure in one direction, for for the eastbound work first and then for the westbound work. And we'll have temporary traffic lanes built in the median to accommodate that traffic shift in between those phases, and that those temporary lanes will be where ultimately the BRT bus lanes will go at the end of the project as the final phase of construction.
And yeah.
Can you, for you?
Are the dry utilities being relocated by the utility company and the contractor is doing the coordination?
So there are some private utilities that are relocating out of the corridor now. We actually have a schedule update for those private utilities later on in the presentation, but they will most likely have completed their relocation by the time we re-advertise or have significant completion by the time we re-advertise. There are some works that are going to have to be coordinated with the contractor, but we should be well clear of the right-of-way at that point.
Okay. And the wet utilities will be relocated by the contractor. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So the next section is Area 3. This is when you go east of 440 on New Bern Avenue, past Wake Med, past the Beltline. This part of the corridor is in mixed traffic, so again, there are no dedicated bus lanes here. The work in this section is actually very much focused just on the back of the curb, sidewalk, resetting curb and gutter around the station areas, and some localized underground utility relocation. So this section of the corridor really doesn't see a lot of significant change, especially with this vertical station work being separate. This is a smaller component of the roadway work.
Yeah, and our thinking currently is that the amount of work in this area, apart from the stations, which will be bid separately, is not enough to warrant its own separate contract package. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but feel free to disabuse us of that notion today. If you feel you disagree with that, you'd be happy to do the amount of work that's in this area as its own separate package. Provide that feedback, please.
And this is where, again, at the end of this, there are boards for Area 1, Area 2, Area 3 that have highlights of some of the quantities that are included in that construction package. So it'll give you a better idea of how much work is anticipated in under each area. So we're gonna go back to our Mentimeter. Hopefully you still have that open on your phones and are easily able to get back into it. If you are not, I would go to menti.com and use that code up at the top, 63612035. And our question is, what is the first word that comes to your mind when you think about bidding on the New Bern Avenue BRT project? That is correct. We have seen a delay. And if anyone that has said a word that wants to say something more about that on an open mic, let our mic know and we will bring that to you. But otherwise, this is definitely great feedback. I'd love to talk to whoever said disco. That should be a priority for where we could set that up.
Does anybody want to comment on a word that they definitely didn't put up themselves, but that they have thoughts about? You don't have to claim the word, is what I'm saying. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
And when was the budget created or established for New Bern?
Yeah, so we've gone
year?
through our budgeting process through the initial Wake Transit plan. We have updated our cost estimates at each major milestone of the project, 30% design, 60% design, and 90% design. And we have worked with our local funding partner to have...
And also at rebidding, re-advertising.
And re-advertisements. And so we've worked with our local funding partner to set that budget and have funding in place for what our identified budget is. And we'll continue to reinvestigate that. But as Sam mentioned, you know, that the bid we got last time was on the horizontal work, a single bid that was significantly over budget that didn't include what we still need to do on the vertical part of the project.
So to answer, so 2024, that's what you're saying was the last time your budget was evaluated. Okay, thank you.
It'll be reviewed as each package goes out for at the time of advertisement to make sure there's nothing significant that's been, you know, overlooked or changed in that time period.
So, you know, I think we saw on the previous slide, someone had identified risk. So the next question is, what do you see as the biggest risk in completing this project successfully? I see schedules lighting up, and I know Sam and I can both attest to this. We've had a lot of conversations with people when the initial round of advertisement happened in March of 2024, as well as the more recent round of advertisement. Schedule continues to be a concern and challenge.
Yep, and we haven't hit on it specifically today, but apart from breaking up the scope between the first and second advertisement, the other biggest change we did was to add time to the contract. So we had already taken that into consideration. We're continuing to take that into consideration. So that's definitely recognized that people see that as a risk.
And I'll keep this on for another second here, but to the schedule point, again, we're about to go through our approach, identified timeframes for those areas. So this is your opportunity to provide feedback into the schedule considerations that we will take into account for when we re-advertise these projects.
Yeah, and based on the frequency of the words, it looks like people have a good appreciation that schedule and conflicts are often tied to utilities, and we'll get some updates specifically on that too in the coming slides here. So that's going to be addressed directly.
All right. So, I think what everyone is here for is the next steps and the approach for re-advertisement for the project on New Bern Avenue. We've identified 4 different packages for construction to get the project moving forward. First is clearing and grubbing just for Area 2. And again, we'll get to some highlights. Actually, if you did not pick up a flyer on your way in, there is a highlight flyer for Area 1 and 3, and Area 2 that, again, shows the quantities, the major quantities that are included in each package. There's a more significant clearing and grubbing work needed within Area 2. Again, that's where most of the roadway work is happening. Second package is the horizontal roadway work on Area 1 and 3. Again, Sam mentioned Area 3 does not have a lot of significant roadway work, so that is being connected to Area 1, which is the downtown right business access and transit work. And then Area 2, the third package of the horizontal roadway work just within Area 2, that's that dedicated median running transitway, so dedicated bus lanes in the median, reconstruction of the median, reconstruction of the new travel lanes, as well as the multi-use path that's on the south side. And then lastly, the vertical station work being kept as a separate package, as we talked about before.
What happens if you do not get any bids for horizontal roadway work Area 1 and 3?
Why wouldn't you bid? Yeah, no, that's the same question we'll be faced with at each of the other stages we've been at, so we'll have to make that decision when we come. Yep.
Is because 1 and 3 is the worst and ugliest part of the project, and 2 is the better part. So I'm just asking that question for the thought. Could happen.
I think that is the feedback that we're looking for here.
Yep.
One of the challenges that we've identified as part of the project when it was re-advertised again as a full package was there were so much risk and utility questions or concerns within Area 2 as well as other areas of the project. So we're trying to reduce those risks by breaking it out into smaller geographic components, as well as allowing contractors who may not have a large potential pursuit library to want to pursue a large project to be able to identify smaller work in the area that they can go after.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And also, I think some of the information about the utility work will address that some. And as well, there are several 2, 3, 4 projects that have been let recently by Raleigh that now that you're focusing in on Area 2 as opposed to the whole project. In Area 2, we've got these similar projects that have been let that should have, a good comparison base for, what kind of bids we can get for the similar size and scope.
So again, we heard a lot about schedule. This is the current approach for those 4 packages for clearing and grubbing, early 2025 spring re-advertisement with an anticipated schedule of 2 months. Construction for all the horizontal elements for Area 1 and 3, re-advertisement in the spring of 2025 with a 24-month schedule. Construction of all horizontal elements within Area 2, again, which is the more significant roadway work, summer of 2025 with 34-month schedule. And then that construction of all the vertical elements, which would be the stations, is to be determined. That is one of those activities that needs to understand how much of the roadway work, horizontal work, has been completed to be able to coordinate with the schedule of the vertical construction activities.
Yeah, but also we're going to be defining more what the dates are of availability for the work in the vertical areas and those will be included, as opposed to the last bid advertisement where we were saying we wanted to leave that up to coordination with the horizontal contractor. We're going to go ahead and provide a schedule for those things to take out some of those questions and risks that people are identifying as concerns.
All right, so we're going to go to our next important question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that the timelines identified for those packages that I just mentioned are achievable? And this is a dragging scale of not confident to very confident, so not confident being to the left of you.
Do you know if we're able to show the other slide while they're responding to this one? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Just regarding this specific question about achievability of timeline, is it assuming a certain budget amount or not? Because I would assume that at a certain level, most timelines are achievable if you can throw enough resources at it, but it might not be as achievable based on a certain number. I'm just asking that.
This is separate from this is assuming a contract has been awarded. Is that, I guess, does that?
So I'll try to answer it differently. I think the question here is if we advertised package for 1 and 3 with a 24-month schedule, would a contractor feel comfortable that they can deliver that in 24 months with whatever resources they have allocated elsewhere in the region, state?
I feel like it still depends on what money that would be accepted as a responsive bid as opposed to rejected. Potentially. You know what I'm saying? I mean, all schedules are achievable if enough resources are thrown at them, but they're not any, but within some realm. But if it's a certain number, then it may not be. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, the city's goal is to deliver it within budget.
Similar budget to what we have now. We should answer that. Okay.
And we do also have sorry, there's some question.
Yeah, my question was just related to the state or section 1, 2, and 3. It looks like I'm assuming 2's in the middle of 1 and 3.
Yes.
So there'll be a lot of lane closure coordination between multiple potential, different contractors. So how has that been factored into the work itself?
That coordination will be up to the city to take more of that on, and our CEI, CM consultant.
And we are staggering that advertisement approach to try to get work started in areas sooner, but I think that would fall on the city's engineering services, roadway design and construction, as well as our consultant team on the CEI side to help.
Is that enough of an answer?
So you want to have lane closures on one section and a contractor on the next section is trying to do something that doesn't coincide with that, and there being conflicts.
Yeah, with this approach, the city is recognizing that we would be taking on a greater degree of responsibility for coordinating those activities between areas and trying to take that risk and responsibility off of the individual contractors doing the separate packages.
Yeah, good point, David. So the section 3 of the area packages would have very limited roadway closures anyway, because that's in mixed traffic. It's really the right lane that probably would need some type of workaround while the station or the linear work is done, and then station's work happens.
Yep, and then in section 2, you're closing one direction of traffic completely and moving it to temporary lanes. So, that's being considered and looked at how the city's going to be handling more of that responsibility.
We're going to move on. Again, this is probably one of the more important questions that we're trying to get feedback on today. So does splitting the project into four parts, 4 packages, make you more likely to bid, less likely to bid? still need a lot more information before you decide, or you're undecided and may leave the room undecided. So again, we have a feedback form that you could pick up that you can leave behind. So if you're answering any questions that you don't feel like you can say everything you wanted to say here to us, there is an opportunity to leave that anonymously at the end. If you answered to this question with need more information, it would be great for us to know what type of information that you are still looking for that is needed, would be more valuable for you to help decide if you're going to bid or not bid on the project. Again, we've tried this time around in this industry day to put more information out there about each package and the potential quantities included in each package, the overall time frame that we're looking for from a construction perspective, what impacts may be there during that time frame. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, please, and that's, today, tomorrow, and going forward, please feel free to ask as many questions as you're comfortable asking today. Having some conversations in front of the visual materials in the back after we finish the presentation part here. Follow up with us. We'll be happy to reach out and spend more time discussing with anybody specific questions that just don't fit in this format. So we want to hear as much information and respond to as much of it as we can.
One question I did have was on that clearing package. Is that truly just clearing? What all is included in the clearing package?
Yeah, so it's truly clearing and grubbing and the erosion control that have to go with it. Yeah.
For
no,
area
no, no,
two.
no. I'm sorry. I anticipated your question wrong. That's for area 2.
Yeah. And that's actually next question. But if there's no other questions, I'm going to go there.
And one of the main intents of that is to get some activity, show some activity going for the project. Right.
So again, the next question is, are you interested in limited scope items within the construction activities for the project? What we're getting at here again is we've identified an approach that's breaking out clearing and grubbing and the vertical stations. Are there components of the project standalone that are interesting from a contractor community perspective that would result in more competition or more activity on your end or not? And then we can take that feedback to see if we need to make any adjustments to our approach currently. And you can select more than one in this option if you're still on Mentimeter trying to respond. So you don't have to pick just one. This is not a multiple choice. You can select more than one item.
You're missing keep it as a bigger package is missing on this as an answer.
And what was that? Sorry.
As a general contractor,
Same.
I don't necessarily want to
Break out those.
break out all these little scopes and have to coordinate with a bunch of different contractors versus me
Doing it.
doing it all. Yes.
He wants a choice for leave it comprehensive.
Thank you for pointing that out. We should have included an option that said all. Okay.
Feel free to come up and tell us that if someone else feels that way, or send an email, vote by email, whatever. The lines will be open for the next.
So I think our activity is slowly dwindling down, but we're going to keep moving forward so we can get to the more questions opportunity for you all. Again, I think I may generally know the answer here. Would you pursue a separate clearing and grubbing contract by itself as identified? That's good feedback. think I was seeing about 19 mostly, but that was 13. So the next one, again, would you pursue a separate vertical stations construction contract by itself? Sounds good. So we're going to kind of move on to the next part of the presentation. We've identified a few items that during the first round of construction advertisement, as well as the second round of construction advertisement, we continue to get questions about these things. So we're just providing another update about each one of these items. Sam's going to get into more of those details about the utilities, conflicts, schedule, conversation as well, and then we have some slides about vertical and linear horizontal roadway work breakdown as well. So federal requirements, this project does have federal funding associated with it, which means that we are tracking the disadvantaged business enterprise participation for the project, as well as federal specifications apply for Buy America and Davis-Bacon, which the new rate for minimum salaries has gone up to 17.75 from the last time we advertised this project. If there are any questions, we do at the end of this have a table specific to our teams that are involved in disadvantaged business enterprise work, as well as the federal work. We did, in our rounds of advertisement, also include a pilot workforce program, again, to an awarded contractor for hosting a community job fair to hire underserved workers and different types of programs. There is a budget set aside for that in each advertisement.
For our second advertisement, we had that broken out across the two packages. That may still be the case. So that both of those community job fairs may not be in a single package.
Public utilities. So this is where I'm going to turn it over to Sam to talk about State Street Phase 3A and the general coordination.
Thanks. Yeah, so our coordination for the construction with the public utilities will be similar to all city-owned projects. So our standard Raleigh City inspections and permits will be followed in addition to all the project specifications. There are new protocols which are included fully in the project specification, or they were in the previous advertisement. They will be again in the next advertisements for inspection of stormwater facilities. So if you're not familiar with those yet, because they're new, please make sure you're going through those and being aware of what's included in that. We'll be glad to follow up with information about that ahead of advertisements as well. And then a specific note on materials, stainless steel fixtures and connections. And I'm backwards. Did we remove that, or we put that got taken out, or that got put in? I forget, Brian. It got put in. Okay, so stainless steel fixtures. So make sure you're paying attention to the details and the notes and the specifications for those materials. We have on-site inspections, third party. That'll be by Arcane K, and then we'll have final inspections performed by City of Raleigh before any acceptance of utility infrastructure. Notifications will be the responsibility of the contractor to notify the public of any service outages, and there's guidelines for how much advance notice you need to provide for anybody that you're expected to impact their service for. So please pay attention to those. Those will be, as strictly enforced as we can. So we don't want the project to be an ongoing nuisance. There's going to be impacts, but we want to be able to communicate those and prepare people for what they're going to experience. At the bottom, we're talking about down here in this area of phase area 1, the downtown area stations, the City of Raleigh. This is also one of the projects that I referred to where we've just bid this out. They have a construction schedule. It'll be completed around the middle of this year. Starting the middle of this year and be completed by summer of 2026. So what they're doing is an upgrade, their own upgrade to utilities in this area, including around these 3 stations. So we have dates in the contract for this area of when those areas will be available, and that was kind of an open-ended. We didn't have those dates specific in the previous bids. We'll have those included in the contract timelines this time, so that's a little more certainty there. On the private utility side, more good news, hopefully. That's how it will be seen. We have had significant progress on private utility relocation over the last period since we did the previous advertisement. So AT&T conduit in Area 1 is done, and AT&T in Area 2 has made significant progress. They're down past Donald Ross, and they did hit a little bit of rock, but even kind of good news there because Dominion has gone through that area already. They've completed their relocations. They also hit rock, but it was manageable. They got through it quicker than we had estimated even. So those utilities are going to be significantly complete, we estimate, before those roadway packages are likely to go to notice to proceed. There will that's the conduit installation. There will still be some work for them changing over their fiber from the old to the new conduits, but that's much more manageable in terms of getting them out of your way if there's any areas of common work. So, any questions on those utilities? So, good news, right?
All right, so this is kind of hard to see, but this is a breakout of the vertical stations and the components included in the station work versus the linear horizontal work. This is a typology of the station that you would see within Area 1. So this is in the downtown on the right side of the roadway. Again, you're seeing the linear road work, the sidewalk work, all being part of the roadway side of things, and then the station vertical components being separated out. So I think we got a lot of questions in the previous round of advertisement when we did break out these components about how that would work and the coordination efforts. I don't know if you want to speak anything more to what we would do there.
I think it might be better if anybody has specific questions with how this is being shown. We tried to provide more detail than we did last time. Hopefully that's what's come across, but once you get a chance to look at it, if you want to talk about it more today, talk about it back at the other stations. Go home and view it in the slides and follow up with more questions. We're happy to go over any of that. Yes, but that won't be included. It's not anticipated to be included in the construction packages.
Yeah, so the question was, is there any art in the stations? So there is art integration, but it'll be part of the vertical work and not the linear horizontal roadway work.
Not the horizontal work. I didn't phrase that quite right. Yeah.
And we do have a slide about that as well, so we'll update on what that looks like. So I'm going to flip through the next couple images maybe a little bit more quickly. Again, this is a vertical station breakdown of what the work entails for the vertical stations in outside the Beltline, Area 3. So these are smaller stations. They're behind the curbside. And it shows, again, what that breakdown is. And then this is a rendering for the split island stations. So this is in Area 2 where we have a station on either side of the intersection. Again, kind of showing where the dedicated lanes, horizontal roadway work is in the middle of the corridor, and then the stations that would go within that median that's constructed as part of the project. So art was a question that just came up. So we do have 3 different types of art. Artists have been selected, and they have worked to date on finishing their art pieces that will go into each station area. So there is concrete art that is anticipated to go into the station platform, as well as the surrounding areas of the platform. Railing art, which will actually be tied to the stations, that will be provided by the City of Raleigh and the contractor's responsibility to install. And then windscreen art, which would be, again, a print-ready digital file provided by the City of Raleigh through the artist, and that would go into the station vertical contract as well. Again, we're taking on the responsibility or coordination component of working with the selected vertical design or vertical construction contractor to make sure that the art is integrated in the appropriate places through artist feedback as needed. And then we have mentioned RK&K a couple times throughout this presentation. So RK&K was selected in fall of 2023 when we thought we were going to start construction last year. they were selected for the construction administration CEI part of the project, and we are ready to bring them on from a contracting perspective once a construction contractor is selected. And they will be in charge of all of the things listed there, too.
Yep, and then just to reiterate that, typical utility department inspections for water hookups, sewer hookups will still have to be followed as any other typical city project.
All right, so we're going to segue a little bit away from New Bern Avenue for a few minutes here towards the end of the presentation, bringing back the programming slide to try to highlight the other projects that are coming down the pipeline. Again, I mentioned the Southern Corridor and the Western Corridor both are in final design. Western Corridor about a year behind the Southern Corridor, but Southern Corridor potentially getting to construction bid in 2027, and then Western Corridor potentially getting to construction bid by 2028. And so we wanted to provide a little bit more about the project for both of those corridors and the total budget that's identified through the federal grant application that we've completed for the project. So Southern Corridor is about the same size as New Bern Avenue. It's 5.1 miles with 3.8 miles of dedicated bus lanes, 9 new stations as part of that project, 7 buses that we would be acquiring for that project as well, and we'll have traffic signal upgrades along the entire corridor for the project. Total project cost for that project is $175 million. That is all-inclusive project cost, so that means the professional services, design costs, right-of-way, as well as construction. So that's not just the construction budget, but that's the overall project budget that was submitted to the Federal Transit Administration. And the reason, again, for that, for the Southern Corridor is because that should bring it back up in just a second. So the reason for the Southern Corridor being $175 million, even at a 5-mile corridor, is because of the dashed line you see there on the map, which is a new roadway extension for the project that has more right-of-way impacts as well as a construction of new roadway facility that's been on the City of Raleigh Streets plan for quite some time. Similarly, for the Western Corridor, we have 12 miles of the entire corridor, 7.5 miles are anticipated to be in dedicated bus lanes. 18 new stations are planned for the Western Corridor connecting downtown Raleigh to downtown Cary. 10 new buses would be needed, and again, there will be traffic signal updates through signal priority at each signalized intersection. And the total project cost for the Western Corridor is $390 million. Again, that's an all-inclusive federal project cost that captures the design, professional services, right-of-way, the buses, everything that's part of the project. And the reason why we presented that is, again, to try to get feedback from the contractor community in figuring out if we need to address the Southern and Western Corridor similar to what we're doing on New Bern, or if there is more appetite for a larger project to be all-inclusive, single construction, bid advertisement of both horizontal, vertical, everything combined together. And so if you can bring out your Menti.com poll again, in an ideal environment, what type of projects are you typically pursuing from a size perspective? Again, this is kind of capturing potentially maybe the bonding capacity that a contractor potentially has. Also, again, just trying to understand from a city perspective as we get Southern and Western closer to construction, how should we approach those projects? We will certainly hold more industry days as we get closer to those projects, having learned from New Bern Avenue, trying to make sure that this feedback of schedule, scope items, things that make sense, don't make sense from a constructability perspective are factored into our decisions and what we do. And I should have said that as you were answering this. You could select more than one answer on this one as well, so you are not limited to a multiple choice one answer. This was meant to provide a range where you could say, I work on a project from 10 million to 300 million. I think 13 is that lucky number. I don't think we have more than 13 responses coming in on most of our Menti meter polls, so I'm gonna Move on to the next one. How would you rate the attractiveness of the New Bern Avenue BRT project compared to the other projects your company is currently considering? So again, I think in the past we've heard some feedback about resources or challenges with resources in other areas of the state, potentially impacting those first round of bids that we had. If anyone would like to say why they think their scale is where they is, we're happy to hear it. And we can also do that in individual conversations. It doesn't have to be. We went over 13 that time. All right. So this is the last question we have, and then we will let the room break to allow you to walk the back of the room, talk to final design consultant and the rest of the team members about different areas of the project and any questions that you specifically have. Again, after hearing this presentation, I know this question was kind of there in the middle part of the presentation as well, but what do you see as the biggest risk in completing this project successfully? This is given now that we've explained some of the other uncertainties or tried to explain some of the uncertainties and the current project statuses of all of those.
Was there any follow-up on the what we mean by City of Raleigh, or is that just could mean a lot of things? It would be helpful if there's anything to focus in on. Not right now, maybe other discussions.
Sam, I think there is a comment about Raleigh specifications as well. I don't know if we want to address that compared to the DOT specifications for the project.
Yeah, we've continued to have, we'll call it overlap on this project between differing or overlapping specifications between City of Raleigh and DOT because this is an NCDOT road. It's a City of Raleigh run project, and they're going to be accepting the project and a number of the facilities like the sidewalks and things like that. So we've tried our best to address and will continue to address, specific vaguenesses or contradictions that are found that we can try and, have some clarification for. We're doing that on other projects as well. This one is not the only one where that's coming up. So that's an ongoing effort that we'll try and make a clear response to, and anything you guys, contractor world, can bring up as a specific question on specific cases. But we recognize that is an issue that exists on these and other projects that involve DOT roads.
Is the City of Raleigh looking at different delivery models like CMAR, CMGC, something that's a little more collaborative that will bring the contractor in earlier and provide you more schedule certainty, more cost certainty, more transparency?
Yeah, we've certainly had those conversations. They're probably going to apply more to the southern and western corridors than they would New Bern at this point, with New Bern being final design, 100% design, construction documents already being ready. This is our best case effort on New Bern to try to get as much feedback as we could from the contract community before we re-advertise and reduce those risks and uncertainties. But we have discussed for Southern and Western potentially bringing on something sooner to try to provide that feedback during the design part of the project and reduce some of those risks.
One idea that NCDOT does is, if they have a project that's over budget or when they get bids in, is they invite the contractor to provide feedback, like why are you seeing this to be so expensive, like certain areas maybe, and just get some feedback from the contracting community that may help y'all with your budget too.
Yeah, I think we certainly, the idea of this today was to get as much feedback as we could in an open environment. Sam and I are still happy to continue talking with people as we try to understand what makes the most sense for the city of Raleigh from a next steps perspective to re-advertise construction of the project. So if there are items where either our unit prices or budget items that are concerning or challenging, we can certainly take a look at that again as part of the re-advertisement. As Sam mentioned, we would be looking at our budget through this activity anyway, so we will be refreshing our budgets as well.
And that outreach to different agencies, different partners, different stakeholders, different interests is continuing. This is kind of a way station we needed to get to have the strategy out there. And now those conversations will continue. If you want to have any of that conversation today, we'll welcome that, either more questions out loud or small group in the back. So.
Oh, we just had a suggestion from the back to open it up to suggestions from y'all. We have a way that we've broken it up, but if you have any suggestions on how to maybe do this better, instead of breaking it up into 4, seemed like a lot of people said no to that, so now is kind of the opportunity to tell us how you would do it. If you could just say how you wanted it to be done, how would it be done? We got an open mic for you.
Well, I'll answer his question real quick, and I'll say leave it like it was, because we bid the project. But I do have a question. Assuming that vertical and horizontal would still be separate contracts, if the city would, in their special provisions this time, really put the scope in between each like what the vertical guys and contractors responsible for and the horizontal, because then the last time and the second go around when you split it out, it was like we didn't know where our responsibility ended and the vertical contractor took off and went from there, or what we had to keep basically graded for him, or if there was anything. It really wasn't spelled out real well. So I would suggest that if you could really put a scope on what vertical is required and horizontal would help whoever's bidding the project.
I think we're open to providing as much detail as we can, and we can, with anybody that's looking at the project, we can kind of have a iteration of here's what we're thinking of including, how does this look to you all, and you give us feedback and say that's not enough, or yeah, that's great, perfect, that gives us what we need. So I don't think I think we assumed that it was going to be an easier lift for a contractor to look at how we delineated it and make those decisions, but we'll try and be more helpful this time.
Last time it really didn't have, we didn't know when the vertical guy would start.
And
so there was nothing in the contract that stated how long we had to maintain with, to keep it clean, for traffic control. So there was some variables there that I think could have been addressed.
And I meant to reemphasize that we'll be including dates for areas to be available by, and that their vertical contract should be finished and handed back over, that type of thing. That will be specified more this time. But yeah, we'll kind of share that as we get it developed and get feedback before we get to the final version of it.
So I think that was the last slide we had. And again, we want to thank you for coming out today, for your time, your participation. I know it's challenging in these environments to do something interactive, provide feedback on the fly. It is hugely appreciated on our end. We're continuing to try to advance forward to deliver something that'll be first in the state of North Carolina as a bus rapid transit project. But to Sam's point, again, we're just trying to do a roadway project that has benefits. And so,
And also, yeah, it's a roadway project. There's a lot more of these roadway projects. Come get your toes wet on New Bern and stay for the rest of the pool party on Southern and Western and Northern. You know,
you mean the disco party?
yeah, the disco party.
I see, David, you have a mic. You wanted to say something.
All I was going to say real quick is we do have a table here talking about our federal requirements, our DBE. Certainly, we do have, as was mentioned, our DBE goal for the project. Also wanted to just point out if anybody's got something they want to ask or something they want to provide a suggestion, what's the best place for them to email that?
Yeah, I'll put some of my business cards back there. Sam, I don't know if you have any of yours, but we'll leave them at the table. There is a feedback form as well that has all of these questions on a hard copy. So again, if there was a question where you felt like you wanted to say something more, but you just couldn't because the interactive approach didn't allow you to do it, please fill that form out, leave it behind. It's anonymous. We won't know where it's coming from. We want to hear more about how we can do better to try to get this project moving forward and constructed and faster.
You don't need to wait for any other future dates to start sending us questions, and we'll be responding to those between now and when we get to an advertisement point, so we can have those conversations as an ongoing basis.
So Mike made the point that he'd like to keep it as one project, which I know we're splitting it up. In the, one project, there's some economies of scale that probably make some things cheaper. Dividing it up, you potentially could get a combo of cheaper bids. In the event that the combination comes back more expensive than the previous bid, is it likely it's still going to go forward, or y'all would go back to the drawing table?
We'd have to look at what our refresh to the budget comes out with the engineer's estimate for each package and how it's advertised, and then where we are from a responsiveness perspective. I think we'd follow our engineering services protocol. Like to stay within budget, but I think there are certain limitations where we understand if something's going to be a little bit more to construct, and that's probably what it is. It will take a process on our end if that does happen. If we don't have the funding identified, that we have to look through our local Wake Transit Plan resources to finish those gaps.
So if there's staggered bids, are you gonna, one comes in, the first one comes in more expensive or over budget, are you gonna wait till the next one comes in to award the first one, or how does that process gonna work?
I think we would have to have, I was going to say, I think we'd have to be responsive to each bid advertisement and the schedule that's identified in there. So, typically bids are only active in our books for, I don't know, was it 15 days, 30 days that we have to act on a bid by?
I think it's 30 days,
yeah. So we would look at that process and identify how we could respond to that bid that we received. Again, we'd investigate our engineer's estimate, compare it to what we've seen in other bids, other activities that the city has, and make a informed decision for taxpayer dollars that are being used with local Wake Transit Plan funding as well as federal dollars in setting that precedent. Again, we want to be respectful and understand that there are challenges to the budget, but as well as challenges to what we can do under CERN.
Yeah, we'll basically do what we did on the previous rounds. We'll do an engineering analysis of, based on information that's available to us about the market conditions, other projects that are similar time frame, and we'll provide what we think is a sound engineering basis, and then a political decision will have to be made. We could be 20% over budget, and we say we think this is going to be as good as it gets, and it still comes back and they say no, we're not. We can't commit that much over budget. So.
All right. Thanks again, everyone, for coming. There are some light refreshments in the back as well. Again, we're around, final design teams around the station area, or the area boards for each package to answer questions if anyone has any. I'll put my business cards back there, so send me an email.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for the attendance and the interaction. That was a good level. Appreciate it.